Hi, everyone, and welcome to Replicon's product webinar on Payroll Workbench. We'll be starting in a minute while we wait for everybody to join on WebEx. So let's get started with our Replicon product webinar on Payroll Workbench. Before we start, all of your lines have been muted. So in case you have any questions during the webinar or after it, you can feel free to chat for the questions. Just send me your questions. My name is Ashni. Send me your questions and I'll answer it while we go ahead with the webinar or towards the end of it. Right, so let's start with the agenda of the product webinar today. We will talk about why are we introducing or why have we introduced the Payroll Workbench. Then we'll look at some potential economical benefits that we have from Payroll Workbench. We'll see how we work ahead with the Payroll Workbench. We'll stick less to the presentation and be more into the instance to look at how the Payroll Workbench actually works. We'll answer some frequently asked questions with regards to Payroll Workbench, and in case you have any questions after that, you can feel free to send me those and we'll answer them for you. Right, so to start with, as of today, a lot of organizations, they face issues with regards to payroll and Payroll Workbench. The first and the foremost issue is correcting the data errors during the payroll processing. So it's all manual. Everything has to be done manually with regards to the payroll processing. So correcting the data errors becomes a huge task. You also have an error of correcting all the process errors. So in case the timesheet had to go over to somebody for approval and by mistake was approved by someone else, or any of such process errors have to be followed up and corrected manually. There are also issues with managing different vendors that you have for payrolls and exporting or creating the files in that particular format so that you can forward it to those vendors in the format that they had requested. If there's any overstaffing that you've done and you have to manage their payroll additionally, then that becomes a tedious task as well. Lastly, if you have any overtime wages to be calculated, so apart from the regular time, you will have to manually go ahead and see how much of overtime was worked by each employee and then go ahead and calculate the wage according to that. While Replicon takes care of all these things that you see as current issues, we also help you to manage your data end to end. So you have to enter your time data into the Replicon instance and leave the rest to us. So we calculate the pay amount for you and we give you out the exact format that you are planning to forward to your vendors. You can have a complete control and visibility over the data that is being exported. So you can see before you export the data, you can see everything that you are planning to consider for payroll processing. And after you have exported the data, you have the file right in front of you, so you can go ahead and export that. It simplifies your payroll corrections and the payroll time operations for processes. So there are no manual errors. If you are planning to send it for approvals, it is all automated. The system does that for you. So you have an approved timesheet right in front of you and payroll becomes much more easier. Lastly, we enforce data permissions so that you can comply with your organization's practices. Let's look at some potential economical benefits that you have with the Payroll Workbench. You will have a reduced administrative overhead. There will be a reduction in potential delays. You can also have reduced errors and correction because there's no manual work involved as such with it. And finally, it'll provide you an improved auditability because you can see the exported data, or before you create a pay run, you have the visibility of the complete data. Right, so let's go ahead and start with how you work with the Replicon Payroll Workbench, and let me exit from the presentation and go over to the instance directly. Now here we are in the Replicon instance. Ideally, in an ideal scenario, you would have all your organization's employees go ahead and put in time into their timesheets, submit the timesheets, and once they get approved, at the end of the month or at the end of your pay period, you would come to a point where you would like to go ahead and perform a payroll action. Now, in order to see if the timesheets that you are planning to consider for payroll processing have been approved or are still waiting for approval or have not been submitted, to have a look at all of them, you can come over to the Payroll tab as I am in right now and go over to the Timesheet tab to see the list of all the timesheets listed here. Select the date range that you're planning to consider for the payroll processing and see what is the status of your timesheets. With regards to payroll processing, we have a new column. It's called Pay Run. If you don't see this column by default in your payroll timesheet tab, then you can click on this gear icon that you see on the top right-hand corner, and you can include the pay run column by checking the box right here. Once you check this and click on Set Table Settings, every time you come back to this page, you will see the pay run column listed out right here. What is the use of this pay run column, or how does it help you, is all that we will discuss as we go ahead with the payroll processing work. Now, just to let you know, the status that you see currently in the pay run column, it says none. It ideally means that none of these timesheets have been included in any of the pay run or payroll processing. There are different statuses that you will see, which we will discuss in a short while. Now, after you've confirmed all your timesheets have been approved, if that is how your organization works, if you have to consider all your approved timesheet for payroll processing, and you see all my timesheets and time data has been approved, I want to consider all these for payroll processing, you can go over and move on to your payroll workbench tab that you see at the last. Now, before we start performing our payroll processing tasks, the first and the foremost thing that we recommend that you do from the Replicon side is create a file format. This is something that we recommend. This is a flow that we recommend from our side. But of course, you can go ahead and follow your own flow for payroll processing. You can have your own ways of creating this file format. However, from our side, we recommend that before you even start payroll processing, we may ask you to go ahead and create a file format so that after you're done with the payroll processing, after all your data has been collected in the pay run, you can directly export it in the file format that you've created. To create a file format, you went to Payroll Workbench and clicked on Manage File Format. You're here on this page where you can create a file format of your own choice. Now, we do provide some listed formats here. So in order to see them, you can go ahead and click on Add File Formats, provide a name, and the pay provider list will be updated here. So you can choose ADP, ADP Pay at Work, CSV, SAP that we currently support right now. After you've chosen the payroll provider of your own choice, you can create a file format including the columns that you would like to see in the exported file. So when I say columns, you can click here. You can choose what would you like to export in the final file that comes that you will be using for your payroll processing. Now, there are a list of columns that you can include. These columns are updated in the system and will pull the data according to what you've chosen here. For example, if I want to choose a username, I'll just click on user. And there comes a field which is called label. So you can go ahead and name this field the way that you want to see in the exported file. So when I create a pay run and I export it into the format that I'm creating right now, that file will have a column and it will be named according to what I put in the label section. So if I put it as EMP name, that's my employee name, this is the column name that I will have. In case I don't put anything in here as such, it will pick up user as the default value for the label. A lot of organizations also have a company code to be added for payroll processing. So in order to do that, you can just click on Add Column. We provide you a field called Fixed Value. Because your company code remains fixed, you can choose Fixed Value. You can name it the way that you want or label it the way that you want. I'm going to call it Company Code and put in the value that you want to with regards to this company code right here. I'm going to probably put a default value here. Then you can go ahead and put in some other values. For example, you can have entry date, and every date format will give you a choice to choose what kind of format would you like to see in the file that you export. We provide some standard formats here, so you can choose any one of them, and whatever you choose, the date will be updated in that particular format when you export the data into that file. If you don't choose anything in this drop-down, whatever has been set in the settings for the user as the date format. By settings, we mean if you go to the gear icon and click on settings, the format for date that's been chosen out there in the settings section will be pulled over for that user and the date format will be updated. In a similar way, you can label this as well. I'm going to call it pay date. You can call it as you would like. Now, all these columns can be filled in, and if you would like to relocate or you want to push one column above the other, you can just click on these four horizontal line icon and move it up and down based on your requirement. I've created some file formats already. We'll quickly have a look at any one of them. So I'm going to open ADP US. As you can see here, I have some columns added up here, and I have labeled them the way that I want. After your file format is ready, come back to Payroll Workbench, and it's now time to create your payroll data. So the first thing that you see under Payroll Workbench is this section that includes all the filters. So let's talk a little bit about the filters that you see on this page. The first one is the date filter. Here you can specify the date for which you're creating the parent. You can choose a from date by clicking on this date right here, or you can choose the to date by clicking on the date right here. The next is your parent status. So as and when you start creating parents, the first time when you create, or the first step after you click on the create parent button, is that it'll create a draft parent. And once you have paid out your employees, once you've exported the payroll data, you will mark your parent as complete. So those are the three statuses, none, draft, and complete, that you will see with regards to your parent. And all those statuses will be updated in this drop-down out here. So the system lets you decide what data would you like to see on this page. Do you want to see data that is included in a parent that is in draft status? Do you want to see data that's included in a parent that is in completed status? Or do you want to see the data that has not been included in any parent till now? Ideally, that is what you should be selecting when you are planning to create a new parent. So we recommend that every time you're doing your payroll processing, set the parent status to none so that you always see the data that has not been included in any of the parents in the system. Choose that, and you can go ahead and have the data listed out here, right? The next is the approval status. So you will see the approval status with regards to the timesheet. You can go ahead and choose what timesheet status would you like to include for payroll processing. I want to include only the approved timesheets, or I want to include the approved and waiting for approval timesheets. You can choose the status accordingly. Then you have filters like department and employee type. Example, I just want to run this payroll for people who are full-time salaried or part-time salaried, and I can choose those employee types here. So it's going to show me the data only for people who are either full-time salaried or part-time salaried, and I can create my parent for that date range. The next you have location. This is a part of groups feature that Replicon provides. So if you have groups enabled in your Replicon instance, in that situation, you will see all the groups listed here, and you can filter the data based on different groups that you have enabled in the system. You also have a user filter wherein you can go ahead and choose which user are you planning to create the payroll processing for. So you can choose the list of names right here. I have chosen one name. You can have multiple names selected, or if you just don't select any name, it will consider that you're running the data for everyone in the organization. Now, once you've set these filters up here, the next thing that you should be ideally doing is click on this button called Refresh Data. The Refresh Data button does two tasks for you. One, it will give out the data based on filters that you've set on the top, and the other one, it saves the filter that you set on the top. So the moment you click on Refresh Data and navigate from the Payroll Workbench tab to another tab, whenever you come back to Payroll Workbench, these filters, what you've chosen on the top, they stay as it is, and you can rerun or you can have a look at the data once again by clicking on the Refresh Data button. So to save your filters, make sure you click on the Refresh Data. Now, once I click on Refresh Data, with regards to this particular filter settings, I will see the complete data listed out here for this particular person, as I've chosen only one user. In this section, I see a lot of columns listed here. I see entry date, timesheet period, regular time, double time, overtime, and time off. However, in my organization, the way I create my payroll is that I will create the first parent with only regular time. The next parent for the same time period, I will create it for overtime or double time. That's how I work in my organization. If that's how you work, in that case, you will have to go ahead and click on this gear icon that you see in here and choose what you want to create the payroll for. So I'm going to uncheck double time, and I'm going to uncheck overtime, and I'm going to uncheck time off. I want the parent to be created only for regular time hours. And I click on Set Table Settings, and I click on Refresh Data. So now I just see the regular hours or the regular time that's been entered with regards to this timesheet periods. for this particular person, and I want to create a payroll for this particular data. Now, once you have the data listed here, I have just one user right now. You will have multiple users listed in this list. You can go ahead and sort this list based on any parameter that's been listed in this table. So I can click on this drop down here. I will have all those options available. I can sort this list based on that. To sort, you just have to click once, and you can choose whether you want the sorting to be in the ascending or click here on the arrow to be in the descending order. You can have multiple sorting options selected, like I want the user to be sorted, then I want post user, I want the timesheet period to be sorted, and then I want the hours to be sorted. So I can have multiple sortings added for this. And after you've chosen the sorting, make sure you click on the refresh data so that the sorting is applied. Now, once you have the data updated, once you have everything in place and you know that this is what I want to include in my payroll processing, the next thing that you will do is click on this button called Create Parent. The moment you click on Create Parent, all the entries that you have right now in this table will get logged. By logged, I mean that they have been included in the parent, and now when you come back and run this particular filter status once again, you will not see these entries anymore as they are no more in the none status as updated above. So I will click on Create Parent, and it will take me to a page where I will have the draft parent created. Now, with regards to the draft parent that gets created, you can change two things right here on this page. The first thing that you can change is the number that gets updated here. This is a numerical sequence that Replicon follows. So as in when you start creating parents, we will have a number associated to it. But you don't have to stick to that number. You can delete the number and you can go ahead and name it the way that you want. So for example, I'm running it for October, so I'm going to call it as October regular hours. Also, you can go ahead and update the description of the parent. So I can just go in here and I can put in any description that I want with regards to the parent that I've created. For example, if I want to just say that included only regular hours, so I can just update that here so that I can have this for my reference later. Right. Now with this parent created in the draft status, if I now go back to my timesheet view and I look at my data, you will see that the none has been changed to either included or partially included. Now, when I say included, it means that the complete timesheet data has been included in the payroll processing. When I say partially included, it means that there are overtime hours or double time or time off hours that I excluded while creating my payroll data, and that has not yet been included in any parents in the system. So these are two new statuses that you will see with regards to the timesheet after you create your parent. Now come back to the payroll workbench, and to see the parent that you just created, all that you have to do is just click on this all parent section here. You will come over to a page where you will see the parent that you created. So click on the parent. Here you will see a button called Export. So click on this Export and you will see all the file formats that you have created in the system. This is the reason why we recommend that you have your file format, so that once the parent is created, you don't have to go into the hassle of going back to the payroll workbench, creating a manage your file formats, come back or do things. You can just stay on this page and you can go ahead and choose the file format in which you're planning to export the data into. Now, once you've exported, once your payroll is completed, you've paid out your employees, you can come back and mark this parent as complete here. That is how we are defining the mark as complete action, but it can completely depend on your organization how you want the mark as complete action to be defined. You may want that the moment you export this data, you want to mark it as complete. So it is your choice how you want to define mark as complete. There is no difference that's going to be made in the data with regards to parent. It's just for the reference purpose that you can mark a parent as draft or as completed. Before you mark as complete, in case you feel that whatever data you took as payroll processing is not something that you had to consider for payroll processing, then you have the option to go ahead and cancel the parent. The moment you cancel the parent, the timesheets will be unlocked and every timesheet will go back into the none status with regards to the parent. So now they will be available for being included into another parent that you're planning to create. However, moment you mark a parent as complete, so I'm going to mark this as complete, you will see that the cancel parent option has gone off from here. To bring it back, you will have to click on this button called revert to draft. And the moment you do that, you will see the cancel parent coming back again. Now let's go back to Payroll Workbench and create a new parent for the data that we did not include earlier. So now I know that regular time has already been included, so I don't see anything with regards to it. I want to click on this gear icon, remove regular hours. I'll keep regular hours. I'll include overtime. I'll include double time since I have that on timesheet, and I'll include some time off hours. And I click on Set Table Settings and refresh my data. So for the same period, now I see the double time, overtime, and the time off hours associated. Now I can go ahead and create a new parent with regards to this data. So I click on Create Parent, and once I reach this page, I can just go ahead and once again edit the name. So I can say OT and double time hours for October. I can also go ahead and edit my description the way that I want to, add whatever I want, and mark it as complete after I've exported or paid out my employees for it. Also, when you go over to the timesheet section, here you will see that now the ones that were partially included have now changed into included. So now I know that everything that was present on the timesheet has been included into the payroll processing. Let's look at a scenario now where you have included every timesheet into payroll processing, but now you realize that there were changes that were supposed to be made on the timesheet. So for example, October 2nd to October 8th, I just realized that the person has not been working 6 hours on the 3rd of October, but he actually worked 8 hours. So I have a wrong entry input here. There are a lot of ways that you can edit the timesheet. You can reject it and ask the user to go ahead and edit it, or you can edit it as a payroll manager if you have the access to do that. If you're a payroll manager and you do have the access to reopen an approved timesheet, you will see a reopen button here. So I'm going to reopen the timesheet here and change the data. Remember that this timesheet has already been included for payroll processing. So I'm going to include 2 more hours here. I'm going to change it from 6 to 8. And I'm going to resubmit this timesheet for approval. If there's an approval path, then that will be followed. In case there's no approval path, you will see that the timesheet gets approved automatically. I'm going to come back here on the timesheet list page, and you will see a new status with regards to the timesheet called changed. This happens when a timesheet has been included in the payroll processing and you've made changes to that timesheet data. Also, with regards to it, now when I go back to Payroll Workbench, I will see 2 extra hours for that timesheet period. If I want to know which date were these 2 hours added, I can just click on this gear icon and I can include entry date and set the table settings and refresh my data. So I have an addition of 2 hours on October 3rd that I need to now include in my payroll processing. In a similar way, if I just quickly go back and I once again change this timesheet to reduce the number of hours on any other day, for example, I reopen this timesheet and I know on Friday this person actually worked for only 5 hours. So I say it to be 5 hours and resubmit my timesheet for approval. Now I've reduced the number of hours that were actually there on the timesheet, so I go back to Payroll Workbench and I see another line which says a -3, which means that I deducted 3 hours from the timesheet that has already been processed for payroll. Now, one thing that you need to remember with regards to the changed entries is that these changed entries will appear only and only if you have the parent status set to none. In case I have the status set to draft and complete and I click on refresh data, I will actually see the complete data and the changed hours. So I'll see 5 here and I'll see 8 for 3rd of October. I wouldn't see how many hours were changed with regards to the entry made. So it's very important that if you are including only the changed hours in your payroll processing, then you choose none as the status and you will see those hours included here. Now, with regards to these hours, you can create a parent and click on the Create Parent option. I will have the parent created, and I'll go ahead and edit the name to something called Changed Hours for October. Just for my reference, I can change the description in case I want to. Coming back to the timesheet view, now the status was changed and now it has come to included because all the changes that I made on this timesheet has been included in a payroll process. With regards to seeing the status of the timesheets and whether they have been included or not included in the payroll processing, you can choose the payroll status as draft and complete, and in or using this gear icon that you see in here, you can have the parent status checked. This is one of the options that you can check. Click on Set Table Settings and refresh the data. So now you will see which of the timesheets have been included in a parent and what is the status of the parent. So if I just go to all pay runs and I go ahead and mark any one of them as completed. So I'm going to probably mark the regular one as complete. Come back to payroll workbench. Okay, refresh my data. So I'll see those timesheets that have been included as complete here. Now, the ones that had overtime hours or other double time hours or a time of hours will still say draft because I haven't marked those as complete yet. If I go to payroll, all payrolls, if I want to see the payrolls that or pay runs that I have canceled, then I have this checkbox right here. I can check this box and I will see all the pay runs that have been canceled for any particular period in the system right here. And that's about how you work with the payroll workbench and how you go ahead and perform your payroll processing. Right. You can refer to a payroll workbench walkthrough video that we have created by going over to the help section and looking for preparing payroll using the payroll workbench. That section has a walkthrough video that we have created for payroll workbench. And if you want to know more about Payroll Workbench or read about Payroll Workbench, we have our help articles at replicon.com/help. Right, that brings us to the end of today's webinar. We have webinars every week, so you can register for them and you can join us for the next webinars. Thank you, everybody, for joining in for today's webinar. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.